Xavier, it is such an honor to have you here in Israel and on the Jerusalem Post podcast.
Thank you
What
for
an
having me.
honor for us to have you advocate so strongly for Israel. And your point of view is very interesting because you're bringing this in a very fun and entertaining way. So tell me a little bit, where did this whole connection, what's your background? What's your background to do with Israel?
Well, thank you for having me. It's a huge honor to be here at the Jerusalem Post.
The Jerusalem Post.
So I've been making commentary about politics and culture for about 4 years now, going back to February of 2021. And I work at a company called Prager University.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nonprofit where we talk about educational content. We talk about political discussions. We talk about various narratives that are going on in the media. And what really drew me to PragerU is just how much they are anti-propaganda. Because a while back, before I started doing politics, I had very different views of everything from race to society to policy to all things that had to do with culture and politics. And it was actually PragerU that completely changed my perspective on so many things. So when I started working there in February of 2023, it was when I was sitting down with the CEO of PragerU, Marissa Streit, who is a legend that will never get the amount of flowers that she deserves. And I was sitting there and I was talking to her, and she told me how she grew up in Israel, and I'm getting to know her. And she says how she comes for a family vacation every year. And she goes, "You should come with me. I think you would really enjoy it." Mind you, I barely knew anything about Israel at the time. Honestly, the general understanding I had is that Israel was often in a state of defense. That was all I really knew, and I knew it was obviously the Holy Land. And I said to Marissa, I said, be careful inviting me somewhere, because one thing about me, I will book a flight. And so then fast forward a couple months, and I'm at a Shabbat dinner at Marissa's house. Now, for context,
Yeah.
I didn't grow up knowing a lot of Jewish people. I live in Los Angeles now, but I come from this tiny cornfield town, 10,000 people, 95% white, majority Christian, and I only knew, now I know it was 3 Jewish kids, 2 of which I didn't know were Jewish until October 7th, but I didn't know much about Jewish culture.
Or Israel.
Yeah. So when I went to this Shabbat dinner, what blew my mind was just the depth of the tradition. Because I come from a background that really lacked a lot of tradition in a lot of ways. And I was so blown away by things that Jewish people view as so simple. Like having a Shabbat dinner every Friday, which in my mind was like, so basically you have Thanksgiving every weekend with your family.
We do. I never thought about it that way.
And that was my immediate perspective. And then I learned about how Jewish people, obviously are dispersed all over the world. Yeah. And still, when you're studying the Torah, every synagogue around the world is on the same page, learning about the same section at the same time. That, to me, was absolutely mind-blowing. Because in the Christian church, we can't agree on anything. We can't agree about the weather. So to see just the unity with so much effort to destroy the Jewish connection, to see so much unity across the world really was amazing to me. So as I was leaving the dinner, I told her, I was like, this is so incredible. She goes, you need to come to Israel with me. I pulled up my Expedia. I'm like, give me the dates and I'm there. So then I came in June of 2023 and wow, did I fall in love with everything here.
Tell me one thing that stood out in Israel that you still remember until this day.
I'll say 2 things. So one, when I came to, this is my 4th time in Israel in just this 2-year span.
We're very lucky.
Oh, I feel very lucky. I feel so blessed to know about the gem that it is here. But when I came here the first time, I was really just blown away by the amount of just the depth of culture, and that things here were so much more, how do I say, harmonious than I expected. Not saying that things here are perfect, but even just going to the old city and learning about the different quarters and how all these different merchants from completely different backgrounds are still unified when it comes to just the love of Israel and the importance and the significance of Israel, and being able to go to the city of David and essentially walk 3,000 years back in time. I did not know that whole story. Wow. And that was mind-blowing to me. And then the shuk. There's just a different level of joy and just beauty, simple beauty and fun. And it was just so mind-blowing to me. And that first trip, I was here for 10 days. And this is really what made me become a huge advocate fighting against anti-Semitism is the first 9 days was like I was in paradise. I completely forgot the fact that I was in the Middle East. I forgot that this was a region dealing with conflict and turmoil. And mind you, this is before October 7th. There was two things that happened. On the 9th day, I was posting some pictures on Twitter, just saying that I was here. I was literally riding a camel. And I was just saying how I was happy to be in Jerusalem riding a camel. And I got so much hate and backlash on Twitter just for being here. And I was like, is anti-Semitism still a thing? I genuinely didn't know.
Wow.
In my mind, excuse my ignorance back then, but how I viewed it was that basically people viewed Judaism as another branch of, or like the father of Christianity, because it preceded. So in my mind, it's like there's not all this Christian hate, and like, or at least to that level in America. So I didn't expect to get all of this hate just for simply being in Israel and getting all these anti-Semitic remarks sent to me and all these terms that I had to Google to see what they even meant.
Wow.
And then on the 10th day, there was a situation where Lebanon had tried to send in their ghetto rockets over to Israel, and they were so ghetto that they didn't even make it here.
Wow.
They like crashed out and burned in Lebanon. So then Israel had sent a response, and feeling the ground shake, hearing the noise, I freaked out. I absolutely lost it.
The first time was always scary.
It was terrifying. And I remember, I will never forget this little girl's face. I see this little girl, and she's crying so hard, but her mother is so calm. And her mother is just, rubbing her hair, just telling her, it's okay, it's okay. And like, I couldn't understand what she was saying because it was Hebrew, but like, you feel what a mother is saying to her daughter to comfort her. And then I stopped freaking out, and I just looked, I was like, oh my goodness, here I have been thinking and feeling like I was in absolute paradise. And then I had to have this wake-up call to remind me that there's an ongoing existential crisis happening where there are people trying to wipe this nation off of the map.
Yeah.
That, between the hate online and then to see it in person, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start speaking out about anti-Semitism.
Yeah. And this is your first actually experience of anti-Semitism. And something very interesting that I'm feeling, I'm not Israeli. I was born in the States. And when I see what's going on and the resilience of the people that are constantly under war, and 5 minutes later, everyone's going back to normal, right?
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Because it's like a happy country. Everything's going well. Everything seems so much fun. And then suddenly there's rockets, So that's a very, very big thing for people to understand about Israel, how we're continuously trying to live our lives along with this terrible war that's constantly going on. And I know you've also experienced personal threats since you started advocating so strongly for Israel.
Oh, of course. One thing I want to say, too, of what you were saying is a friend of mine said this to me that lives here in Israel and said that we're getting way too good at just going back to normal. And that, to me, is just so mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And, when October 7th, so I started speaking out about anti-Semitism in August, and I do this series called Walk With Me. And
what year is this? August?
This is August 2023. So I made a Walk With Me video about anti-Semitism where basically I have my smoothie, my headphones on,
I love it.
and I just go on these unhinged rants. And I
Walk
talked about
with me.
anti-Semitism is ghetto.
Yeah.
It is ghetto. It's so rooted in bitterness and all these different things and just a lack of education. And I spoke about it in a humorous way, but I was so serious. When October 7th happened, I was blown away by how quickly the narrative switched.
That was terrible.
I remember when it first happened and everybody was on the same page, at least in the States, about this is one of the most horrible humanitarian crises ever.
How long did that last?
I would estimate 12 hours. 12 hours, because I was watching every single post. I was on Instagram Live with people that I knew that lived here that were telling me what was happening, and like I'm seeing the smoke, like it's crazy. And then within days, and the videos start getting taken down off the internet, and then all of a sudden people are saying October 7th didn't happen, and all these different things happen. And I'm like, okay, this is what I was just learning about. Because when I was in Israel and I went to the Holocaust Museum, one of the things that I had to figure out was, how did this happen? And really what it comes down to is that when propaganda goes unchecked and too many good people don't stand up to stop a bad thing from happening, this is what happens. And I realized, oh, this is biblical. What's happening on October 7th, this is not like any other crisis. Like, this is something that is going to be pivotal to the future of this planet. And that's when I started doubling and quadrupling down of I'm going to stand on the side of truth. Now, where the threats come in is as I started becoming more and more of an advocate for Israel and against anti-Semitism, I speak about controversial issues literally 24/7. Like, it's what I do for a living. I talk about politics. I talk about racial issues. I talk about all these different issues. I've never seen the level of anger and backlash quite like what I get when I talk about anti-Semitism. The death threats got so out of control, I was going to the police station every other week. And mind you, I don't go for every death threat. I get a death threat probably every other week at this point.
Wow.
I only go when they're severe. And I was having to go to the police department so many times because of it. And I realized, I'm like, okay, this is the test. This is what people are trying to do to silence me because they know I'm fighting against evil. And, you know, what I say to Jewish people all the time, and it's kind of the principle that I'm trying to, you know, have in my mentality too, is that the only thing that Jewish people should fear is what will happen if they succumb to fear.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be on the right side of history, I have to quadruple down on that too. I take a bunch of different precautions and I'm very safe, and, you know, I do everything that I can to make sure that I'm safe and protected, but I don't live in fear. I just try my best to live in truth, and that's all really you can do.
And that's so amazing because with us, in a way, with the Jewish people and Israelis, we have to defend ourselves, otherwise we won't exist. But for you to actually advocate so much for Israel, even though what you're experiencing is quite amazing. And I know that you have a lot of opinions about what's going on. And the latest is yesterday, Hamas said that if they stay in power for the next 5 years and there's going to be a ceasefire and they're going to stay armed, they will release all the hostages. What do you think about their...
Wow. Well, I don't... For the fact that Hamas even has the audacity to pitch this idea of staying in power is very frightening. Because what 5 years of a ceasefire really means is let's go reload, get more funds, make more missiles, and continue to put these hostages through absolute hell.
Yeah.
Okay. That should not even be... like, the fact that that's even an offer shows how little they have learned from October 7th and from the horrors of October 7th. That is basically them saying, like, yeah, we did what we did, and we're going to continue to have this mindset. So I don't think that that's an offer. I don't even think that should be on the table. And, you know, that's my first time hearing it because I've just been in vacation mode since I've been here. I haven't been checking the news.
It's very new.
But that's just audacious is the only way that I can summarize that. And these terrorists, they need to be wiped out. Every hostage should have been home 2 years ago at this point. Yeah. It's almost been 2 years. The fact that there are still hostages is a shame. And, you know, it shows how little Hamas actually cares about humanity because they continue to put their own people in the way in the line of fire and then to gaslight the whole world and to make it seem like they're the ones that are the woe little victims, the sorry little victims. It's like, no. You waged this war with a nation that has done nothing but try to bend over backwards to acquiesce to your comfortability. And that was another thing I learned my first visit is just the amount of effort that whether it's the greenhouses, the resources, all the different things that Israel has given over to the Palestinian territory to try to help them out, just for Hamas to continuously take all these resources away from their people and indoctrinate them to be filled with hate.
Exactly.
And people don't understand that in the States.
What do you think the problem is? Why are we losing this battle of, you know, media? Is there anything you can see from being an outsider from America, non-Jewish, that we can do that we're not doing enough?
A few things.
Okay.
I think one of the first things because it all goes back to history. And I'm not a historian. I always make that very clear. I might have some details a little rocky, but the general premise I understand very well. If you go back to the biblical days of even Ishmael and Isaac, you essentially had Ishmael that was this great communicator, but was vengeful from day one and bitter from day one about Isaac getting this attention that he felt he deserved because he was the older child. And obviously go look at the whole story. But Isaac, he wasn't the greatest communicator, but he was on the side of truth. He was on the side of trying to protect his family, protect his neighbor, protect his brother. And I feel like that's similar to what is happening now, where the messaging isn't quite there. Where in Israel, Israel has such an integrous army, and Israel tries so hard to protect life and to preserve life, but their messaging is not as clear and direct as it needs to be. Meanwhile, Hamas and these musty anti-Semites, they're very good at communicating. They're very good at getting people to believe in the narrative that they're putting out there while they're doing nothing but spew hate. So it really does tie into that biblical perspective. So to summarize all of that, I want to make sure I word this correctly. Israel needs to do a better job at not just defending themselves against narratives, but showing the world who they are. If you spend too much effort defending yourself against who you're not spending that time and energy showing the world who you are. And that is what's necessary in order for people to understand the great things that Israel actually does do for the world. Like, people don't know that this is the beacon of democracy here in the Middle East. People don't know that this is the only places where so many of the rights and the luxuries that we have in America and in Western society, Israel's the only safe place for all of those.
In the Middle East.
In the Middle East.
Exactly.
So in America, where we have this perspective, or so many people have this perspective of like, oh no, it's this black and white issue where Israel and Jews are the white people and they're oppressing the black man. They try to make it this America-centric BLM type of situation, and it's just built on this foundation of fraud. The other thing, so it's knowing your history, making sure you're showing the world who you are. And also, I do think that Jewish people need to stop making a separation between being Jewish and Zionism. Because I feel like why a lot of Jewish people aren't standing up and standing against the lies and the narratives in America, what it comes down to is they don't feel the depth of the connection to Israel as they should. Israel and Judaism are as synonymous as it gets when you really look at the history of it and you really look at just the biblical context of it all. But what it is right now is a lot of Jewish people in America are like, well, Israel's just a country that I run to, worst case scenario. What they don't realize is that the existence of Israel is the existence of the Jewish people.
Exactly.
And when it comes to the greater scale of things, when people say, well, how does it affect me? Well, if Israel falls, then we have this whole geopolitical situation, and that's a whole nother conversation of what has Hamas wanted to do since 1988? Wipe out Jews, Christians, and all of Western society that isn't worshiping Allah.
Exactly. They'll start their next mission.
We are next. We're the next in line. And you will have so many of these nations here in the Middle East.
And you can already see it in the universities, the colleges in America. That's very scary.
It's terrifying. And it's people that are blindly following a narrative because, again, the messaging is so good from the side of evil that the side of truth has not made enough effort to make sure people know the history, but also make sure people know the great things that you're offering to the world. I can give you a story about UCLA too. So I was a part of helping dismantle those encampments. So how that happened was I knew that they weren't that intelligent. And
whenever you interview them, you know it. Whenever you ask them, where is Israel? Where is it on the map? Are they pro being, gay or not, or blacks or whites? They don't understand that this is the only democratic country, and they can't go to Gaza if they would want to.
Exactly. It's like the funniest memes of all time will include the chickens for KFC is queers for Palestine analogy, because it's that insane and ridiculous. But one thing that I really was blown away by, so when it came to the UCLA encampments, my friend Cam Higby and I had this idea where we wanted to go in, and Cam was going to interview people, and I was just going to go around like in disguise and figure out the conversations happening there before we just cause chaos. So we went to Staples, got the exact same red wristbands that they were using to allow people in because I knew they weren't that creative in making sure it was exclusive. So we went in there and I was just going around eavesdropping on conversations. One of the things I make sure people always know, because I always refer to anyone who supports Hamas as musty because Hamas is a musty terrorist organization. And just to prove how musty these people are, they were sharing gender neutral poop buckets. And I will make sure until my last breath, people know that that was happening.
Wow.
That's how dirty these people are.
That's disgusting.
Disgusting. People need to know that. That's the important tea that people need to know. So one of the things that I will never forget, because it really changed my perspective of really how society works, it blew my mind, is there were about 5 kids standing. So here's the encampment. Basically in front of the encampment was a Zionist I guess, anti-protests or counter-protests is what you would call it, where they were playing footage from October 7th. And I went over and I'm like, okay, I have to hear what these kids are saying about it, because there were some kids that were moving the plywood apart to try to see what was happening over there. And they're all asking each other, they're like, what is this? Why do they keep playing this? Like, is this like them bragging about what they do to Palestinians? Like, they thought that this was Israel going in and attacking Palestinians.
Wow.
And as they're asking each other, what's this? And I'm like, oh, that's footage from October 7th. And they all looked at me, all 5 of these kids who at this point had spent weeks living in this encampment, chanting Antifada. They asked me, what's October 7th?
Wow.
October 7th of what year? What happened?
Wow.
And then it took me aback and I realized, oh, while a lot of the people there are paid bad apples and paid people that are full-time anti-Semites,
Yeah.
a lot of the people that are really the fuel to this movement are just, being blunt about it, they're underclassmen misfits that couldn't really find a sense of community. And where they found community was activism. And what they think is that they are standing up against this genocide because the messaging of the other side has been so good that they don't even know what escalated this whole situation. They don't even know that Israel has given at least 5 two-state solutions that have been shut down by the Palestinians because they so desperately want to wipe Israel off the map. They don't know that it wasn't just Hamas that was raising havoc on October 7th, because they don't even know what October 7th is, let alone that it was the Gazans who came in and did a lot of the kidnapping.
Yeah.
They don't know any of this.
And in half an hour before, there was silence and there was a ceasefire.
There was a ceasefire.
Yeah.
And I realized in that moment, oh, it is all about miseducation. Education is how we got into this mess, so education needs to be how we get out of this mess. And ultimately, more people need to understand the reality and the truth. And my friend CJ Pearson always says, if you're explaining, you're losing. Where if you are putting yourself in the sense of defense and how you're explaining yourself, it's like, but this, and this. It's like, no, spend more effort showing to people the truth, showing the people the values and the resilience and the love that Judaism puts out into the world.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of another story. My first time I came to Israel, something that blew my mind was this story. And it's so simple. It's really the simple things that speak to me sometimes. I learned a story about this tree that was planted, and the tour guide was saying how this is actually where a rocket landed and it made this big crater. So a group of students came here and planted trees, because where they bring hate and they bring evil, we bring love and we bring life.
And that's why we need you so much. And that's why we're so honored to have you, do all this amazing work for Israel. And I know it's generally from your heart. And that's why I really want to thank you for being here today. I'm sure I'm going to have you on the show again next time when you're here. And it was a real honor to have you here today. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.